everybody. Thanks again for tuning in to Lessons with Troy, the podcast. I'm Troy Brenningmeyer. Well, I'm very excited for this week's guest. It's New Zealand Based Weissenborn player Thomas Oliver. Thousands all around the world, including myself, have been watching his masterful playing on YouTube, and I'm so happy to get the chance to meet and talk with him all about his music and also his life in New Zealand. We're going to kick off this podcast with a song that was his first song I saw him play on YouTube and what initially drew me to really love his music, and that's a song called The Moment, which you can find on his album entitled Beneath the Weissenborn. If you want to learn to play the song, check out my other site, onlinelessonvideos.com. And also, if you want to learn more about Weissenborn, dobro, lap steel, or pedal steel, go to my site, lessonswithtroy.com. Right now, here's Thomas Oliver playing The Moment, followed by my interview with him. Well, hi, welcome to Lessons with Troy, the podcast. I'm Troy Brenningmeyer. I'd like to welcome Thomas Oliver, all the way from New Zealand. Let's go ahead and welcome Thomas. How's it going, Thomas? What are you up to today?
Very good. I'm just working on some music and chatting to you guys.
Cool. Now, tell us we talked a little bit before this, just kind of getting all all the tech stuff going. But what's going on with you right now? You're recording a new album. Is that something that's you'd like to share? Talk a little bit about.
Sure, yeah. I've been working on a new album for about a couple of years now, and it's a singer-song. It's sort of like a full production singer-songwriter album. So I suppose a lot of the slide players know me for Beneath the Weissenborn, my instrumental Weissenborn album. But with this album, I've kind of gone back to my singer-songwriter roots, I guess you'd say. And it's 10 tunes. I'm currently working on the 10th, the last. So I'm almost there, which is pretty exciting. As I say, I've been working on it for quite a long time, and it's quite a new sound for me in many ways. I've kind of explored different avenues, and I'm producing it myself. So in many ways, it's a new step, but in other ways, it's kind of bringing all the things that I've ever done together for the first time. And so obviously there's Weissenborn on there. There's some slide playing, but it's not centered around the slide guitar like my last one was.
Yeah.
So some of it's kind of acoustic and rootsy, and some of it's a bit neo-soul-y, and some of it's got electronic influence, and yeah, it's
nice.
It's exciting. I'm excited to release it.
That's really cool. What you were telling me, I thought was really interesting too. You said that you live in Wellington, New Zealand, right? And then for this album that you're working on now, you've kind of taken a little break from Wellington, and you're off in a little surf town. And what we're seeing on the video right now, for people who are watching this is your kind of makeshift studio that you go to get away from everything to record this album. I thought that was just really cool. What's life like? I mean, I live in near St. Louis in the Midwest. What's life like for you in New Zealand?
New Zealand's it's a beautiful place with beautiful people. It's a very it's got quite a distinctive culture. I think it's very relaxed. People are very mellow, and I mean Wellington especially, which is the capital city where I live. It's a population of about 300,000, so it's a small city, and the people, everybody kind of, when people come to Wellington and say, so what do we do here?
Yeah.
I'm always like, man, you know what? I don't know. You just kind of go down the main street and you get a coffee and you sit and you talk to people. And, when I think about it, there's not a whole lot to do in Wellington, but the culture is just people, and there's a cool music scene, and all the musicians kind of help each other out. And, like the bass player from a reggae band over here is also a DJ who plays a residency in this bar, and and the singer from this rock band over here also plays drums in a soul band. It's and everybody helps each other out on their projects. It's a very community kind of music industry, and everybody says hello to everyone on the street. It's a really cool place to live, and I'm in Hawke's Bay at the moment, which is where I grew up. It's 4 hours drive north of Wellington on the east coast. And this place is just super slow and relaxed, nice beaches, and so I worked on most of my album in Wellington, but as you said, I came up here to finish it off, basically, just to do the last couple of months, and I can really see now why people do it, because you hear all these stories of people going away to a cabin in the woods to make an album, and I've really kind of understood the value of that now, because my head is clear, and when my head is clear, it just allows all of those creative ideas just to come out without having to fight against your tax return and all those things that you should be doing.
Oh, yeah.
All those things that you have to do in life. So I for the last month, apart from a bit of touring and some shows and stuff, I've just got up, started at 9 a.m. Worked on this album, and I worked through to about 5 o'clock with a lunch break, and then at 5 o'clock I have a beer and come back to work, and have a couple more beers, and I just keep working, and it's really nice. And I generally work till about 11 or 12, and it's a good solid day, and I wake up just wanting to do it again.
That's awesome. That's such a cool day. It's inspiring for sure. I'm sure people are hearing, your average day when you're doing something like that, and sounds amazing to a lot of people. Sounds amazing to myself, especially living in New Zealand. I'm sure you're, from checking out your Facebook pics and different things, I see, you, other than just music, I mean, you do all kinds of cool stuff in New Zealand. I mean, I see that you do, skateboarding and things like that, but are you into the surf community and things like that too?
I've been skating since I was about 10, but surfing a lot. As I said, I grew up in Hawke's Bay, which is a bit of a surf town, and lots of my friends were surfers, but it wasn't really something that I picked up on, I suppose, because growing up I would skate from 9 in the morning to 9 at night kind of thing. So, I'd always just be wanting to go to the skate parks or go to the skate spots, and lots of my friends would go to the beach and surf.
I got to ask this question. Maybe I'm too, my wife and stepdaughter call me Tragedy Troy because I always worry about breaking something, a hand, a finger or something, with playing music. I mean, when you're skateboarding, I mean, one thing that always goes through my mind, I'm sitting there watching you do all these tricks and crazy things, and I'm like, are you worried? I mean, with playing music and all that, do you ever worry about breaking a wrist or arm and not being able to play?
Well, I think that I was never a really good skateboarder or anything, and I'm far less of a skateboarder these days. And I think that I suppose when I was 16, 17, I was a decent skater. But the moment that I dedicated my life to music, which was the moment that I made the decision that this is all I was going to do, was I was about 18, and I would say that was the point at which I developed a true sense of consequence, and so I totally know what you mean, and I think that in order to be a good skater or any kind of extreme sport or a lot of things physical, you have to not have that sense of consequence. And good skaters, they don't think about getting hurt, they don't think about the consequences, and that's what allows them to achieve at that level. And I used to be like that when I was a kid, but I think it was music that gave me that sense of consequence. So I don't skate hard like I used to. I skate most days, but sometimes it's just getting around, or a little jam on a ledge or something, and it's definitely in my mind. I try to ignore it because I also know that you can if you. You don't want to have too much of a sense of consequence, or you'll never enjoy your life. Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's what I see when I see your picture. I'm like, this guy is the coolest guy ever. He's skateboarding. He's living in New Zealand. He's, probably surfing. And he's playing Weissenborn. And I was just like, man, I gotta interview this guy. If I ever go to New Zealand, I gotta have a beer with you.
Yeah, man, for sure.
If I move to Mars, will you come with me?
Well, tell us a little bit about your new single that came out called "If I Move to Mars."
That's the first single from the album that I'm working on at the moment. That's the first single from this album. So. We released that in 2nd of October 2015. So it's been out for a few months, and it's done such good things. I'm really excited by how well it's done so far. It's in the New Zealand charts at the moment, and it's had even commercial airplay on the commercial stations, which is cool to see. And Yeah, but it's a song. Basically, it's inspired by the possibility now of moving to Mars. You know, it's becoming a very real thing, and I was driving from Wellington to Hawke's Bay with my girlfriend, and at the time, and she said, well, we're talking about what would be a cool thing to write a song about, and we were thinking about, because you know we had this 4-hour drive. We're like, we might as well do something productive or try and think of something, and
Yeah.
Mars was sort of in the news a bit, and she had the idea of writing a song about Mars, and so I took that and turned it into, you know, I guess kind of a love story. Like, if I move to Mars, will you come with me? Because that's the part that makes it a song, I suppose, the part that people connect to, and so yeah, the verses are kind of just this slightly tongue-in-cheek description of all the things that we would take to Mars if we went there.
Yeah.
But it was crazy because the week I wrote that song. I finished writing that song about a year ago, and I've been playing it live in my live sets for a long time. In fact, I first played it, I think, at Sziget Festival in Budapest in August 2014. So that's when I had finished the song, and it had sat on my hard drive for a while, and my manager and I finally booked this release date for 2nd of October 2015, and the week before that, NASA announced that they had this exciting news about Mars to announce, and then that week, that Monday or Tuesday, they announced that they'd found water on Mars.
Nice.
And then on the Thursday, The Martian. Oh, is that what it's called? The movie, The Martian. Is that what it was called?
Yeah, Matt Damon.
Yeah, that came out on the Thursday, and then If I Moved to Mars came out on Friday. So it worked in our favour because Mars was so topical at the time. Everybody was talking about Mars, and then the song came out, and we had this music video made by Weta Workshop in Wellington, which I'm sure you know of, and they and you know, it's me plummeting to Mars. It's a perspective shot of me in a spacesuit playing a space guitar and plummeting to Mars. So it was kind of serendipitous that it seemed like we were just really switched on, or we'd been having communication with NASA or something.
Yeah. Well, that's what I wanted to talk about too, because you know, I watched a little bit of it and then saw some kind of behind the scenes pictures of kind of how you did it, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's how you did it. So they actually had you turned sideways, right? Is that it kind of held sideways as you were being filmed? Can you talk a little bit about the video to that song?
Yeah, sure. So we had to give the impression that I was in space plummeting, you know, so I'm rotating, you know, end over end. And the guys who created the video, so Ben Hawker, Steve Lambert, and Haley Gray predominantly, they from Weta Workshop, they're all like space gurus. So it was really important to them to get it right, you know, so that the physics couldn't be disputed. They didn't want to. They're real perfectionists, and it just so happened that they were space freaks. So basically, a rig was made for me with a motor on the bottom, which suspended my body. I had they made custom molds that held my body under my right leg and under the inside of my left leg, and held me on my side, and it rotated slowly. So the room, we were in a big room, and it was all blacked out, but there was a light source at one point. So that was the sun. That was so that as I rotated, with every rotation, the light would wash across my body, and that was the sunlight. So I had this space guitar which was made for me, and it didn't have any frets, and I had to wear these big space gloves, and we were speeding the song up to 120%, so that when we slowed the video down back to normal, it felt a little more floaty than normal. So So I was rotating on my side slowly, playing a space guitar in gloves, singing my song at 120% speed, and I did that for a total of 8 hours for that day. So I spent 8 hours on my side rotating and playing the space guitar, and I had to do 6 weeks of what do you call it, Swiss ball workout to make sure my core was strong enough to be able to withstand the day.
No
so I had
way.
yeah. So I had Luke Hawker working with me, who's a professional stunt guy for film, and he made the mount, and he was the one who was talking me through how difficult it was going to be, and yeah, so I got a Swiss ball, and every day I'd do these exercises. It was great. I got to get in shape,
Yeah. That's great. Oh my gosh. So that suit then, is that what was going on with that suit? That obviously, I mean, was that a specially made suit that they made just for this video?
No, it came from the States actually. It was I forget exactly where in the States, but it's basically a replica spacesuit. So it's essentially a real spacesuit that's never been to space.
Yeah.
And I think its intention is for films, and it's to hire. So it cost about $5,000 to hire the suit, which I guess is about $3.5 US or something, or four US, 4,000 US.
Okay.
And that was just to hire the suit. So most of the budget for the video went on the suit, but because the this perspective is looking down at my body the whole time, we had to have the real deal. We had to have a proper suit, and we got some patches made. So it said NZSA instead of NASA, and we had a New Zealand flag instead of an American on the side, I think it was, and had a little patch that said, "If I move to Mars, will you come with me?" And so it was a cool process.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I was looking at that suit, and I'm like, is that a real NASA suit? I'm like, that can't be. But it looked, I mean, the detail of it was amazing.
Mm.
Well, cool. Well, so you got the new album coming out. Do you have a title for it or a release date in mind or anything?
The album's going to be called Floating in the Darkness, and
Okay.
it'll be out second half of 2016.
Oh man, I'm looking forward to that one.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I know that we've got people are going to be listening to this that are obsessed with your last album, the Weissenborn album, Beneath the Weissenborn. And if you're listening to this or watching this and you don't have that album, I highly recommend it. It's an outstanding album. I mean, great tunes. The Moment, that's one that we're actually going to talk about in the podcast. But the Jurassic Park theme that you did there too. I actually, I have some questions here. I don't know if you ever get on any of these forums or anything like the forums that people for it's not necessarily just for Weissenborn, but for dobro or any kind of lap style instrument. Rezo Hangout is one, and I posted, if anybody had any questions for Thomas Oliver, and we actually got quite a few questions. But this one, let me see where it is. For the he had a specific question about the Jurassic Park theme. Andy from Boston asks, he said, what is his process when he decided to arrange the Jurassic Park theme for Weissenborn? He said, it's a grand orchestral theme. What did he think about in approaching it from a lap guitar perspective? So,
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for the question, Andy. I think that the first thing, I mean, I've been in love with that score since I was 7, and it's pretty much been stuck in my head since then. But I was actually just playing around one day and just played the melody, the initial melody, just for fun. That's how it got started, and I loved it so much that I just sort of decided I'd keep going and see how far I could get, presuming that I would hit a wall and not be able to go any further. I really didn't think that I would be able to, in some way, arrange the whole thing. I was just doing it for fun. But once it became a serious venture, I guess the two things that I had to make sure were in there. One was obviously the melody being the most important thing, but then the chord movement underneath, and for me that's the biggest it's the biggest challenge or the most important thing when playing instrumental Weissenborn music or music that's intended for a Weissenborn alone, so you don't have anyone else to hold the chords down, is getting the melody and the chord movement or the bass movement to work together. And obviously, because you've only got a single bar, sometimes you simply can't reach the melody note and the bass note at the same time. So that's when you have to kind of think outside the box, or perhaps retune the guitar, or approach it from a different way to try and make that work. So I do it in open E flat, which is just standard open D upper semitone. So I didn't really, and that's what it was in. It was in D when I was playing around, so I didn't really have to explore tunings too much. That just seemed to work. I went to E flat because the original piece is in B flat, and B flat. I tried putting big fat strings on and going down to B flat, but it was just too, because I often do that and I go down to B. I have these John Pierce strings which are like 17 to 68 or something. They're huge, and I go down to low B. So I thought, maybe I can go one more and go to B flat. So I tried that first, but it was just too low. So I went to E flat, and my reason for that was that E flat to me is most similar. Every key has a feeling about it. That kind of intangible emotion that comes with a key center. For me, E flat was most similar to B flat. Because I could have done, probably B, C, C sharp, D, E flat, or E, for example.
Yeah.
And yeah, E flat's got a nice softness about it, which B flat has too. Whereas had I done it in D, D's a really bright key to me, quite vibrant, and it wouldn't have quite captured the same feeling. So I went to E flat, and then to be honest, like a lot of it, especially in the main theme, kind of fell into my hands a lot easier than I expected it to. Some of because largely that main the chord movement underneath that, if you kind of ignore John Williams' a lot of the inversions, or the way the certain instruments move around, if you just try and extrapolate the fundamental chord, it's just 1, 4, and 5 a lot of the time, or depending on which way you look at it, E flat, A flat, B flat, and so and the melody notes happen to be usually within the chord. When you've got a chord, but the melody note is not one of those notes, that's when it can become difficult. But as I ventured into the song, a whole lot of it became a lot more difficult. I actually I came out of that, arranging that song. Sorry, I'm looking down here because I got a Weissenborn down here.
No, that's okay.
I came out of that song actually feeling like I was a far better Weissenborn player than I was at the start, because I actually figured out ways of doing things that I never even knew existed, simply by pure necessity, because the music was already there, and it had already been, I was just there to work out how to get those notes onto that. And so I had to really think outside of the box sometimes and try different positions and different ways of thinking, and it really expanded my own understanding of what you can do on the instrument. I'm so glad I did it, and now I can take those things with me. But I think to answer the question, the approach is really just to make sure that A, the melody is there and it's strong, and B, make sure that the chords are underneath that, so that that might just have to be one bass note, an open A string, or open B flat string in this case, but use your open strings to your advantage. Where obviously when you can use a bass note, hit a bass note which is an open string, that gives you all the freedom you need with the melody. And then generally like one melody note and one bass note will paint the picture of the chord in most cases. So it might mean a bar slant,
oh sure,
but as long as you can get that melody and that bass movement or the chord movement to happen together, then you've kind of got everything you need, I think.
Nice. So just kind of for my own understanding too, I know we're both kind of studio geeks, we've talked on Facebook about mics and different things, how do you go about miking your Weissenborn? Is it different for each tune? I mean, are you picking different mics for certain tunes, or do you just have kind of one set way that you really like to have your Weissenborn recorded?
I've kind of refined over years of being in studios and recording Weissenborns what I like the most, and I've often been in studios and recorded it and listened back and just thought it's not as big as I want it to be, or it's not as bright, or it's not as whatever. I've always had an image, an idea in my head of how a Weissenborn could sound, or how good it could sound in a recorded sense, and often not quite got there. And there's a studio in Wellington called STL, and Troy there, he helped me kind of try a whole bunch of mics and preamps and placements and everything and eventually I kind of arrived at what I consider to be my favourite. But for most of the tunes on Beneath the Weissenborn, I don't use the same way all the time, but for if I'm going to record an instrumental piece, so where the Weissenborn is the only thing in the mix, because that's obviously different to if you've got drums and bass and stuff. I quite like the stereo. I quite like recording in stereo, and my favourite mics are Charter Oak M900Ts. So Charter Oak is a relatively new mic manufacturer, run by a dude named Mike Deming, who is in the States somewhere. I forget exactly where, but yeah, basically they're tube instrument condensers, tube pencil condensers. So I've got two of those, and I use Buzz Audio preamps, which to me are the cleanest and most amazingly the dimension of them is incredible. They're made in Wellington, actually, by a dude named Tim Farron. So he's just down the road, and to me they're the best preamps I've come across for recording acoustic instruments, particularly Weissenborn. So yeah, I generally have one of those mics. I just angle them in basically on my hands, so one on my left hand, one on my right hand, through those preamps, and then pan them hard either side. But I've got a bit of a secret which I can share.
Only if you're comfortable.
Yeah. Oh, it's all right. I love sub bass. I love bottom end.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because I'm a drum and bass fan or whatever it is, but I love, when I record Weissenborn, especially solo Weissenborn, I love the bottom end to be really deep. So not necessarily big, but not what's the word? I can't think of the word. Not like too chunky and thick, but the bottom end to be really warm and deep. And so what I do is I record the pickup as well. So I have a pickup in here, which is a Fishman Neo D, which is a magnetic pickup. And I've got one in my original Weissenborn, which is over there too. And it's a bit of a decoy, really, because I don't ever use this live. This is here purely for recording, and the reason I have that is that I found that magnetic pickups have the deepest sub-low response out of all the pickup styles. So I record this too, and then I basically low pass it so that all that's remaining is the very bottom end. So I just cut off everything, because obviously I don't want my recordings to sound like a magnetic pickup, because I hate them. Because I hate that that quackiness you get in the top end. So I take it all out so that all that's left is just at the bottom, and then I compress it really hard I've got an LA28 here, but with anything really, just compress it, hit it really hard so that it's really even, and then so you got the two mics panned hard either side, and then I just bring that bottom end up underneath, and so what you get is, and then I'll put reverb on the mics, but not on the pickup. So the mics give you obviously the real character of the instrument and the air and the space and all that stuff, and then what you get underneath is just this really deep but even, because of the compression, it's very even and it's very direct because it came straight from a pickup. So you get this sub-low response, which is really deep. So if you listen to most of the tunes on Beneath the Weissenborn, you'll hear that the bass strings are quite they're quite big, and they're quite deep. But yeah, it doesn't sound like I've just turned up the bass or something. It just sounds like the spectrum is greater.
Yeah.
So I wonder if I've that's just something I tried, experimented with and arrived at. But yeah, if I were recording in the context of a band mix or something, then there wouldn't be much point of doing that because the bass is going to be holding down those sub frequencies. But for an instrumental piece where the Weissenborn is the sole instrument, then I feel that the stereo thing gives you a massive spectrum. Panning them hard either side kind of puts the listener like here. So it puts you inside the guitar, and then you've got this bottom end to fill out the bottom. So it paints this huge picture. But I've been going for this album I'm doing at the moment. I've been going back to mono recording. Just one large diaphragm condenser, just kind of facing at the 12th fret, basically. Generally because there are other things happening in the mix, be it drums or other instruments or bass or whatever. So. That whole stereo spectrum thing is not necessarily as relevant or effective in the context of a mix, whereas having a really definable source for a Weissenborn can be better in that context. But does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've for years now. I mean, I saw your video on YouTube, the moment, and it was when I was just getting into recording, and I had a few mics, and I remember putting on headphones and listening through my studio speakers, and I was just like, what is that? That is huge. And I'd listened to all these other recordings, and I tried myself, that was kind of the sound that I was wanting to get, that big spatial full stereo sound that you were getting on the moment. Cool. And also on those other tunes. That's interesting that you say that about the bass too, because a lot of times I would have your album up there, and I would A and B my tone, and then I'm not, I'd say, oh, well, what's his tone like? Well, what's my tone? What is that? And I'd listen in the truck, and I'd be like, it has some bass going on. What is that? And that's perfect, man. Yeah, one of the mics that you used in the moment, because there's like a tutorial, or it's like a kind of it shows what the different mics sound like your the Cascade X15 and
that's
some
right.
others. Yeah.
That one's a bit different from, because that was the first Weissenborn instrumental I ever recorded, or the first one I wrote too, but so that was part of the whole exploration process. But the X15 is a stereo mic, so that's how you're hearing the spectrum. And there's a ribbon mic, there's a Cascade Fathead, I believe, which I've got one of somewhere. And so that really, that recording of the moment on YouTube has a really chunky, like low mid sound, and that's so there's a C414, which is really neutral, and then there's the Fathead, which gives it that kind of grit and that chunkiness, and then the X15, which gives it the stereo feel. But I loved that recording at the time, but I kind of moved away from that chunkiness in the low mid that you get with a ribbon mic. I kind of like quite a pure and like clear sound, I guess. So I re-recorded the moment for Beneath the Weissenborn. It's essentially the same played it the same, but with a new recording approach. So you can actually listen to a lot of people comment on the sound of that original moment recording and how much they love it. As you just did, and I think that people love that ribbon kind of chunkiness. But yeah, you can, if you're interested, you can listen to that and then listen to the album version, and you hear, because the album version is the two M900Ts and the bottom end, whereas the original one doesn't have that bass trick underneath, because we were sort of trying to that came about, I think, because Troy from STL, he asked me, I've got some new mics to demonstrate, would you come in and play something so that I can make a video to demonstrate how these different mics sound, and then you can have a video out of it, kind of thing, So
Sure.
we just did this deal. So he's got on his YouTube page one where he goes through the mics and you can listen to each one, and on mine is the one that you've seen, or so that's a slightly different approach to what I would do now, but yeah, a lot of people have commented on how much they dig that sound.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm just curious too. This is, just kind of for my own knowledge too. When you're recording the videos, let's say, for YouTube, what's the process with that? I mean, is that something where you're getting one take, or you're the majority of your take is good, and then maybe you cut in, because I would think that you'd have to do some cuts somewhere, unless, are you doing just all that pretty much in one take, video and audio?
Yeah, most of them are pretty legit,
Really?
What
Man, that's incredible.
But there are some points where perhaps I muffed a note and managed to find one from another take. But yeah, like Oxy, I think that one, I'm pretty sure I got that one in one take. The moment, I can't remember how that one worked. It was a while ago now. Jurassic Park one was pretty legit. I think I actually stopped. Yeah, I stopped at one point. I got to the end of a section and then took a moment to work out when the next, what happened next, because there's so many modulations and sections, and I kind of just froze there, and I think there's footage of me sort of laughing. So while I'm sort of standing there, and then I kind of laugh and there are people around there filming me, and so I think we just cut out in the video and the audio, just sort of cut out the part where I couldn't remember and started laughing and just snipped it together.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the most part, they're all pretty legit sort of one take performances.
Man, that is amazing to me. Maybe it's just me. I do so many takes. If you saw me in the studio, when I do these lessons, but yeah, I was wondering specifically on Jurassic Park, because there's so many movements to that. I mean, it's incredible how I was thinking, man, that he must have done that in multiple takes, but you don't see it in the video. In the video, it's just looks like, which obviously, it's the same one.
Jurassic Park, I didn't do. Often I'll do them to a metronome, like the moment. And Oxy and These Streets Were Clean, I've got a little earbud going up into my right ear that you can't see in the shot, but it's giving me a click. So I'm playing to a click, and most of them, which makes it a bit easier if you need to do any editing at the end. As if you've got a click track, then it just makes everything a bit easier. But Jurassic Park, because it breathes a lot, the tempos fluctuate a lot. I didn't have a metronome with that one, so it kind of makes it harder to play. Like the feel in the moment becomes more important. The feel spontaneously, becomes more important. Because if you want one section to flow to the next naturally, but it's got to slow down, then you kind of need to play that section and then that section. I just feel it makes it harder to drop in. If you've got a click track, you can kind of drop in and start again.
Yeah.
But when you don't, you kind of you want to play as per, as like what a classical player would do, and just play the whole thing and feel their way through the tempo modulations in real time.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I got some of these other questions, if you don't mind. You want to
Sure,
take a few
yeah.
more questions? These are kind
Yeah.
of good. Let's see here. Okay, so obviously, I think you mentioned this a little bit, but one of the people wants to know what strings and what tuning. Let's just say what strings do you use for specific tunings, I guess, or what brand of strings, I guess they want to know.
Cool. It's funny, I get like messages on Facebook and emails every day from people all around the world saying, what kind of strings do you use? And they probably feel like I'm going to have some really kind of insightful answer, but my favourite strings for Weissenborn are D'Addario's. For standard detuning, I would use 13 to 56, so the red packet, the mediums. If I go down to C sharp, I'll usually use the same. So open C sharp, I'll use 13 to 56. If I go to C, I go up a gauge to 14 to whatever that is. And if I go down to B, there are these John Pierce. They're called John Pierce Weissenborn strings, the ones I mentioned before, and they're 17 to 68. So when I go down to B, I use those. It says on the pack for D tuning, but putting 17 to 68 on your Weissenborn and tuning it up to D, I did it once and I was like, man, it feels like you're just about to break the bridge off. So I don't know why it says for D tuning, because to me that seems outrageous, but because they work down for B, because obviously the deeper you go, the looser the strings get, so you got to up the gauge to so that they can withstand it and sound decent. I actually, when I put those on, the 17 and the 22 or whatever it is on the top two, they're just a bit too fat and there's no brightness. They're really clunky. There's no like brilliance or presence in the top string. So I swapped them out for whatever you get in a pack of 14 D'Addarios, I think.
Yeah.
So it ends up being expensive because the John Pierce ones are about $30 because they're a special import. There's a shop on Cuba Street in Wellington called Alistair's Music who gets them in for me, so they're about $30, and then I have to buy another pack to get the two. So every time I play in B, it costs me $45 or something.
Oh man!
But and if I go up to E flat, I think I'd just stay at 13s. If I went up to E, which I don't really, I'd probably go to 12s. Standard gauge. But D'Addario's I find to be the best. And then if I'm doing different tunings other than standard shape, like some of the tunings on some of my songs are slightly different, I just kind of just think about it accordingly, really. I mean, just if you think that 13 to 56 is a good gauge for detuning, then if you're going down, then you can up the gauge, and if you're going up, you want to lower the gauge, and that's really all I think about.
Gotcha. Here's another one from Dave. He asks picks versus fingers, pickups versus mics when performing and or recording. And I think there's like 3 questions here. And what came first, his singing voice or an instrument? So first question is, which is actually a good question, because I'm a dobro player and I use picks. I've tried to use fingers, but I don't have any calluses on my fingers. But I know you use your fingers. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually have acrylic nails on my right hand, so just on these 4 fingers. So you can see that I don't have them on here. So I just go to nail salons, as per any woman does, and I just ask for 4. I get funny looks all the time. I just asked for four acrylic nails, and it's, man, I just constantly have these now. I get them changed about every 5 weeks or so, and it's like having a super hand, because I played I think about half the stuff on Beneath the Weissenborn was before I started doing this, so it was just the fleshy sound, and I used to be into that, but now I love the brightness of these. And they don't feel. I've tried finger picks in the past, and they feel very foreign to me. Because it's an extension of your finger, whereas these just feel like your fingernails because they're actually fastened to your fingernails. So it feels no different to playing when you've got long fingernails, except that they're louder, brighter, and they never break. So for me, it's like it's just perfect. I love having these. It's totally worth all the funny looks I get on planes, and um, but but yeah, I mean, I think the playing with fingers, obviously you get a softer, warmer, fleshier sort of sound, and for certain applications that can be great. Like if I want to record a bass track for a song I'm working on, I have to rip these off, because you can't play bass with clicky fingernails.
Oh yeah.
Or if I were recording a tune where I wanted a softer sound, I'd take them off. But these work great for me. Sometimes I look at guys like you playing with finger picks, and I listen to that sound, especially on a dobro, and it just sounds so bright, and I love the sound of finger picks on a reso, and sometimes I get a bit jealous, when I'm watching reso players with the finger picks, and it just sounds so good, and I think, man, I wish I could sound like that, but they just feel so weird to me that this is the perfect kind of halfway point.
Yeah, that's something new. I mean, I new relative to maybe your original YouTube videos you had said, because I always would watch those and see just the fleshy fingers. When did you start using those again? The fingernails?
Well, I got my first ones when I was, like 17, just trying them out, and occasionally I'd have them, and I'd just have them intermittently since then.
Okay.
But now it's got to the point where I just constantly have them, and if I'll touch down in a place where I'm playing that night, and if one of them's broken off, I have to go to the nail salon before sound check and get new ones. I can't play without them anymore, because that's what I hated about just doing fingernails, was that if one broke, you'd have bright tone on two strings but fleshy tone on another.
Yeah.
So it just became so problematic all the time. And the finger picks for me, I like the idea of not having to put something on my finger every time I want to play.
Yeah.
Even though obviously you got to pick this up, but for me this is just I like them so much that I just constantly have them now.
And now I'm assuming that you've tried those. They're called Alaska picks, right? Where they go. They're like a finger pick, and they're like a fingernail. They go under your fingernail, but above your finger. Yeah.
Nah, never heard of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh man, I should send you. I ordered a bunch and I never use them. I should put them to you in the mail. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Are they aimed at guitar players or like reso players or anyone in particular?
Their whole selling point is it's like a finger pick, but you still get the fleshy part of your finger. So it's just like a fake fingernail. The only awkward part, because I tried it a little bit, is basically it goes under your fingernail. So you feel this kind of weird plastic thing under your nail, which can be a little weird.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you check out on YouTube, a guy who's he's going to be on the podcast coming up, Dan Spitz, he used to play with the group Anthrax, played guitar. Yeah. He plays with those, and he really, loves those Alaska picks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll check them out.
Okay, so getting back into some of these questions. Another one Dave had was pickups, and I think you had mentioned this before: pickups versus mics. Any thoughts on that? Yeah,
well, for recording, I would always use mics, but the pickup for the technique I explained before with the bottom end. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, so live, are you using mic or pickups live, or is it mics?
Nah, generally I'm not using mics live unless it's like doing a live session or something. Like I'm sure some people have seen the Aston Road sessions that we did. Those were, there are a couple of mics on the Weissenborn there. But generally it's just the pickup. So I'm trying to replicate as much of a microphone sound as possible. So my pickup of choice is an LR Baggs Anthem, which is you've probably seen them in people's guitars. It's the one with the little cream thing that sits in here.
Yeah.
This is a piezo and a mic blending system. So there's a piezo that sits under here, and then a microphone which sits underneath the bridge, and then a blending system between them. So I use just about all microphone, but just a little bit of piezo. Like I said before, pickups are going to generate more sub-low frequencies than a microphone, especially a small microphone. So I dial in a little bit of the piezo, and that just deepens the bottom end and slightly crisps the top end, because if you think about a piezo, it's quite, shrill at the top. I don't really like the sound of a piezo, as most people don't, but a microphone with a little bit of piezo, just using it for its good qualities, works perfectly for me. And it's great because I do this drumming thing on the Weissenborn, so it's good to have a piezo pickup under here for me, because when I thump here, it's going to make a nice kick drum, and I need the microphone because when I'm drumming on the edge of the Weissenborn, obviously I need to pick that up. So if I had just a piezo, I could hit the side and nobody would hear it. But if I had just a mic, it gets a bit that kind of nasally honky sound, and you don't get the that you want. So this works perfectly for me. The only, obviously, the problem with it in Weissenborns is that in order to have a pickup underneath your saddle, you have to change, you have to mess with the inherent design of a Weissenborn. So one of Weissenborn's, one of the kind of distinctive facets of Weissenborns is that they had a floating saddle. So, this piece of wire, which it literally is just wire, sits in a groove on the bridge, and it's just, so when you take the strings off it, you can just take it off. But in order to have an undersaddle pickup, you have to route a channel underneath this for the piezo strip to go in. And so this is my Tony Francis style for Weissenborn, and Tony wasn't particularly into the idea of having an undersaddle pickup, because it meant messing, because his thing is reproducing Weissenborns and being scarily close to the integrity of the originals, but for me, he did that because he knew that it was a musical decision that would allow me to do the things that I wanted to do. So he routed the channel under here. On my original Weissenborn over there, that we haven't put an anthem in that because we just can't bring ourselves to cut into the bridge, basically, because, as I said, that's kind of sacred to the original Weissenborn design. We were talking about Tony making a new bridge for it, so that we could take that one off and keep that one intact and put one in, because basically I don't play the original live at the moment, because, as I was explaining, I need this pickup in order to do the things that I do. So I think we might get to making a new bridge which we can put it route a channel under it, so I'll get to do that, play that one live too. But there are all sorts of pickups that you can use. I mean, a lot of people love mag mics. Mag mics seem to be the pickup choice for most people, I think, because Ben Harper uses them, and so naturally a whole lot of other people use them. I had one in this for about a year, and I just couldn't stand it, basically. To me, I really hate them. So I've tried everything under the sun, and then I went to K&K Pure, which is transducers under here, and I liked that initially, and then over time I grew to dislike it. It just sounded kind of nasally to me. But it's such a preference thing. It's not really about what sounds the best. It's about what sound works for you the most, and what works for your music. So mag mics are definitely not the one for me, and I really can't stand magnetic mic pickups on acoustic instruments. I hate it. But this works for me, and it allows me to do the musical things that I need to do.
Well, one thing that I'm looking at with my Weissenborn, it doesn't have any pickups in it or anything, and it I haven't found a good way to mic it live, but I haven't tried this yet, but I'm looking into those DPA mics. It's on a gooseneck, and it clips on, clamps onto the side of the. Have you ever tried any of those? The DPA 4099, I think it is.
No, I've never tried. I remember my dad telling me about them. He may have tried them. I can't remember what he found, but I think perhaps feedback. I seem to recall his saying that feedback became an issue. I think it depends on the environments you're playing in, but if you're certain rooms, certain venues, when you've got a microphone sitting above your guitar and then two monitor speakers coming right back at you. You know, the thing about a Weissenborn, when you play a standard guitar, you can have a microphone that comes out on a gooseneck and goes back in there, and then its field is facing away from the monitors, which are coming like that. Whereas with a Weissenborn, because it's going down like that, you often find, you know, same as miking a Weissenborn, because you have to mic it that way, that's almost pointing straight into the monitors.
Yes.
So you'll find that microphones are more troublesome on a lap instrument than on a standard acoustic guitar for that reason. So the Anthem works great for me because I never have feedback problems, but the mic sounds really natural. It's right inside under here, so it works great.
Well, talking about your drumming on the Weissenborn, my stepdaughter, she's going to love this question. So on Rezo Hangout, Hunter asks this. He says, does he have any more plans to do additional Bieber covers, meaning Justin Bieber covers? The one he posted on Facebook made my wife and daughter huge fans. And that's the same thing that my stepdaughter, she, you know, I'll play her stuff that I do, and she's like, that's neat. It sounds like everything else. And then, you know, I played her that, and she was just mesmerized. Like, that's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. It's funny that I just did that. I was on tour in Australia, and I had a day off in Melbourne, and I was at a friend's house, and I was just mucking around. I was mucking around, and I sent a Snapchat to a friend, just because you know you can only, when you use Snapchat, you have to hold the button down, so you can't play with two hands. So I think I was filming myself and just went, "Is it too late now to say sorry?" Because he's a Justin Bieber fan, and I just did it for fun, you know. And she came back saying, like, you know, you should do the whole thing. And I kind of laughed, and then I thought, well, I have got, you know, 6 hours with nothing to do, and everyone was out of the house. So I just thought, oh, okay, and so I just set about working it out to send to her, as, you know, just for fun. Yeah. And so it took me a few hours of trying to coordinate, you know, I had to learn the words and coordinate singing and doing this at the same time and stuff, and I just set up my camera on the stairs and filmed it, and I posted it to her, and I sent it to my manager just to be like, oh, check out what I did today, kind of for fun, you know. And she came back saying, like, holy shit, put that up right now, you know. So I chucked it on Facebook, and all of a sudden it was like, you know, getting, you know, thousands and thousands of views, and all these new fans, and it cracked me up because I just sort of did it for fun, and all these people, you know, like hundreds of comments of people saying, like, oh my God, you just made me a believer and stuff.
A believer.
Yeah. But I only did half the song. I've sort of been meaning to answer the question. Sorry, I've kind of been meaning to actually work out the rest of the song and just post a video of me doing the whole thing. Again, just for fun, because it's, you know, it's a challenge and it sounds cool. But I'm not going to make a thing out of doing Justin Bieber covers, I would imagine.
Hey, I think you're onto something there. It's going to get a whole other generation interested in the Weissenborn.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I knew we had talked too about you know, doing a song and including it on my other site, onlinelessonvideos.com, and we had talked about the moment, you know, having that tablature. I know that, you know, you have that available, but you know, tablature and MP3 and stuff. But what'd be cool on, at least, you know, what I've noticed with that tune is some technical things that to me are really difficult, and that's the tuning section of that tune, the moment. I mean, any thoughts on how to approach that section? What I mean is on that, you know, where you change the tuning and
yeah. I think it probably just comes down to practice. I'm still yet to have the moment live where it just goes completely wrong, because it's not the kind of thing you want to mess up, because you know, you can't play once. If you get it wrong, you know, you're kind of screwed. I still haven't, you know, I've had some kind of hairy ones, but nothing, I haven't had any disasters yet, which is good. I think you just have to because every time you restring your guitar, it's going to put this tuning peg in a different place. So so you kind of have to be prepared for any position of the machine head. So sometimes it'll be flat, and you have to know, because you haven't got a lot of time to do it. So you have to know how to work it. Because sometimes I'll go for a more kind of twist approach like that, or sometimes if it's flat, I'll push down on it and twist like that. I think you have to be, just as the section comes up, it's good to just look at the tuning peg and think, okay, how am I going to approach this? Because you've got to do a semitones turn.
Yeah.
But there are, the main part that because I've seen a bunch of videos of people playing the song on the internet and stuff, and the main part that people seem to miss in that section is the chord change. Do you want me to show you? Do you want me to show you what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because it goes when it happens. So what is it? It's that note there. So it kind of change. It's essentially a 5-chord change. I don't know if you can see, but I'll move around. But
Yeah.
so when I play those 3 strings with the updated change, that makes a 5-chord. So you got the 1 chord and then the 5. So it goes, and then this part here is really just filler, so that I can get my hand over here and prepare it for what's going to come next. So we go. First is a sweep, and I'll always make sure that I play this string really loud, because that's the one that we're going to tune down, and you have to do it by ear, obviously. So you don't want to miss it, or play it quietly so you can't really hear what's going on. I'll always sweep with a lot of emphasis on that string,
Nice.
and then tune down, and then there's another of the low C sharp. And then the second string, and then after that, that's when it actually goes to the 5th string. So I've seen people do it where they just stay on this, but it's actually got the change. So I got these headphones on. I can't hear what I'm playing, so my tuning's not quite right. Yeah, so I think that's probably, to me, the most important part, because that's kind of what's nice about the change, is that there's actually a chord change within it. It's not just a note sliding down by a semitone, but the chord actually changes too. So
Nice.
and so on. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I love that tune. That's amazing. Well, man, what else can we? We're probably about running out of time. I know you probably need to get back to your recording today.
I've got about an hour, so we're probably all good to chat some more.
Nice. This is fun. Well, I know, depending on when people are listening to this or watching the video, if it's after your gigs that are coming up, I know you've got some gigs coming up that you could promote. When are those happening? Your tour and all that.
I'm touring Australia in about a week or so, for most of February, basically. So I'm actually doing a tour with Fat Freddy's Drop. So I'm supporting Fat Freddy's. Fat Freddy's Drop is, for anyone who doesn't know, is kind of probably New Zealand's most well-known and most loved band. They're totally awesome. So I'm stoked to be going on the road with them. So we're doing about 11 dates across Australia, starting from about the 13th of Feb till the end of Feb. So I'm just I've got about a week to work on my album and try and get as much done as I can before that tour, and then I'll be coming back to New Zealand at the end of that. So if there are any Aussie listeners, check it out online, and hopefully you can come see a show.
Nice. And
I'll have
your
this with me
website
for
is.
sure.
Oh, what? I'm sorry. What'd you say?
I'll have this with me for sure.
Nice.
thomasoliver.co.nz.
Nice. Yeah, and I'll put up a link on there too for you.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, man. Let's see. I know I got you here. It's like a. What has happened as far as I wanted to talk about YouTube and kind of how that has propelled your success or people knowing you, because I found you through YouTube, just randomly actually. But how has that benefited you? Have you found?
Well, I think YouTube was really what allowed people to discover me as a Weissenborn player, and it kind of led to all the other things that I do too. But the moment was the first Weissenborn instrumental that I ever wrote, and like I said, we just filmed it because of that deal I had with Troy at STL. And I just chucked it on YouTube, just thinking, oh, cool, it was just something for the sake of art, for the sake of it, really,
Yeah.
And it just started to get thousands of views from all around the world, and it just kind of got me thinking about. It kind of made me realize that wow, the people really seem to dig this stuff, so I wrote another instrumental, which I think the second one was "These Streets Were Clean," and I filmed that and put it on YouTube, and then wrote Oxy and did it, and it started to, I was getting, lots of interest and lots of messages and lots of views and stuff, and I realized, wow, this is kind of something worth exploring. So I decided I would do an EP of Weissenborn instrumentals, and I was going to just put together, write 5 or 6, and 3 of which were already done. So I was just going to write a couple more and put them together and just do a digital download for basically for the Weissenborn players, for the slide players. That's the way I saw it at the time. And as I got further into the process, I realized that, hey, this is not music for slide players. This is like music for people. And one of the things that has really astounded me is that beneath the Weissenborn and all of the kind of solo Weissenborn stuff I've done, it has appealed so far beyond what I initially thought it would, which I thought it was just kind of for the heads, this just for the slide heads around the world, and but it's it seems to appeal to people of all walks of life, and it was really YouTube that established that for me, or made me see just how much people love it, because New Zealand's a small place, and there are not many slide players around. I mean, you never see a resonator guitar. I know a couple of people locally who play, but it's not something you see. And Weissenborns, like I'm like the Weissenborn guy here. There's not really anyone playing it professionally, and so I suppose to have that, to have that avenue where the world could watch, it made me see that there was a lot more to it than I perhaps had anticipated. So I decided then to make a full length album instead of an EP, and I called it Beneath the Weissenborn, and then and as I got further through the process, I decided to make it. I started to think about it actually as a whole concept and a body of work. So it's not kind of like a concept album where the journey is as much a part of it as anything. And but yeah, I suppose YouTube was the thing that really got it all started for me.
Yeah. Now I know kind of my understanding of Australia and New Zealand and different things. It seems like there are some players like you and Andrew Winton and Xavier Rudd who they're not necessarily, I don't want to say, your standard lap style players. They're beating on it. They're doing all kinds of different techniques, but it seems like Australia and New Zealand definitely has some players that are interested in the lap style technique. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Australia much more so than New Zealand, because you've got John Butler and Xavier Rudd and then all of all of their disciples that they naturally create. So there's kind of an Aussie sound, or an Aussie thing, which is that rootsy, if you imagine dreadlocks, bare feet, and a Weissenborn, or a beaten up Cole Clark, or beaten up Maton, like, it's quite a thing. But New Zealand, I know that the perspective from your part of the world is that New Zealand and Australia are very interlinked and, interchangeable, but the reality is that the cultures are very different, and, we have different currency, for example. So there is obviously, we have a bond. We're actually we're playing cricket. The Black Caps, our cricket team, are playing Australia in about an hour and a half, and it's that's like the greatest rivalry that could be. The New Zealand versus Australia. There's a lot of contention between us. Obviously they're our neighbours and we love them, but yeah, so I think in Australia there is a bit of a Weissenborn thing. It's still, but in New Zealand it's not really the same. It hasn't kind of found its way down here in the same way that it has there. But apparently Ben Harper, I heard a statistic that New Zealand has more Ben Harper fans per head of population than anywhere else in the world, and he's aware of that and he loves New Zealand for that reason. So you would presume that it naturally creates a lot of slide players, but honestly, I know about 5 people who play Weissenborn in the whole of New Zealand. There are obviously more, but there's not really anyone doing it. You don't see anybody playing a Weissenborn on a stage in New Zealand, that's for sure.
So this is a cool way to do the interview, I think, because I'm going to do it reverse, where you normally start off the interview with the bio, but now that you've kind of said that, like only 5 Weissenborn players in New Zealand, it has to beg the question, like, how did you even come to start playing the Weissenborn?
I was 17. I played guitar since I was 10, so I was already a guitar player, and I was 17, and some friends and I from school, we went out to Waimanama Beach, which is in Hawke's Bay, which is where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
One of the friends had a beach house out there, and we went out and had a party, and we woke up, and the next morning we were cleaning the house and making breakfast and that kind of thing, and I was sweeping the floor, and my friend Celia put on this CD, and I just was kind of listening as I swept, and I just kind of became more and more drawn in as the album went on, and it was Welcome to the Cruel World, Ben Harper's first album, and I suppose one of the things that intrigued me about it was the sound, that instrument. I could hear that it wasn't a guitar. I could hear that it was like a guitar, but it was different, and it was a large part of what made the music kind of distinctive, I suppose. And so I if I remember correctly, I actually took the CD. Celia was my friend. I don't know why I didn't just ask her if I could borrow it, because I must have been terrified that she would say no, because I could feel that my life was changing. Those moments in your life where you can feel that your life is not going to be the same from this point on, or something is changing.
Yeah.
And it was one of those. I could feel that I was about to become obsessed with this music, and so I took the CD. I don't want to say stole, because I gave it back to her, but I took the CD, put it in my bag or something, and went home and rinsed it, and I looked into what it was. And it turned out to be a Weissenborn, and so I set about trying to find one, and I went to the local music store, and there's a guy who ran the music store in Hastings, a guy named Rob. He had a Harmony lap steel from 1939 or 1949, I can't remember. Basically this little short scale thing. It looked like it was modelled off a Gibson, like it was black but with a little bit of sunburst. And it was, it was wasn't a particularly good one, but it looked cool, and it was all I had at that point. I mean, I'd been tuning my acoustic guitar down and putting it on my lap and clacking around on the frets trying to learn how to do this, which obviously wasn't ideal because the action's so low. So I bought. He sold me this lap steel for $300, and we had to put a new pickup in it because the original pickup was shot, and so I got that, and that's what got me started in learning how to play. And then eventually I contacted a dude named Roger Hartshorn who lived in Christchurch in the South Island in New Zealand, and he was making Weissenborns, and so I ordered one from him, and he made me this thing. It's a Merlin, and it's still around. My friend Sean has got it at the moment, and so I had that for a number of years, or for a few years, and after that my dad put me on to Tony Francis, because I'd moved to Wellington by this stage, and Tony lived not far from Wellington, so I went and met him, and we became good friends, and I eventually got one of his too, and I've had a bunch of his now, and we're really tight, and I get to try most of the things that he makes these days. But yeah, it was Ben Harper who got me into it initially.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think coming from a dobro background, I hate to even admit this, but I've still yet to really get into Ben Harper that much. I went the Jerry Douglas, Rob Ikes, all your standard, really great dobro players, and now I'm branching out into all these other people. But it seems like a lot of the, especially like you said in New Zealand and Australia, and different people have told me, the Weissenborn, they hear Ben Harper playing it. I know there's other, like Ed Gerard, lots of David Lindley and people that play it too. But,
it's funny you say that about the Rezo background and then getting into Harper, because I'm sort of the other way around. I've been recently really drawn to playing Rezo, and speaking of Jerry Douglas, I borrowed. There's a couple of songs on my new album which have Rezo on them. I went round to. I got a friend named Tony Burt in Wellington. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of the Rezo. He always talks about Rezo Hangout and stuff, so I'm sure a lot of the listeners would know of him. But yeah, he's the Rezo guy that I know in town, and occasionally I'll go around and have a coffee with him and talk about slide guitars, and I called him up one day and I said, I've got this song I'm working on, and I need what I think it needs a steel body national sort of sound. Have you got any nationals? And he said, yeah, I've got one right here. Come around and grab it. So I went round and I played it, and it was great. It was a totally cool instrument. And just as I was about to leave, he said, "Oh, before you go, check this out. Check out what's just turned up. It only arrived a day or two ago, and it was a Paul Beard Jerry Douglas signature, which he'd ordered. And it had just arrived, and he put this thing on my lap, and I was like, oh, cool, and picked up the bar and went, and I played one note, and I was just like, wow, like completely taken by this instrument. It was just perfect, and I instantly knew that what I had in my head for the song was actually not a steel body sound; it was a wood body sound, and this guitar was the perfect guitar that I needed for this song. But he'd only just got it, and these things are thousands of dollars, especially in New Zealand. It costs us more than you guys, because we've got to get it here and all customs and taxes, and so he just got this thing which he'd probably been waiting for months, and I didn't have the heart to ask if I could use it, but I sort of knew deep down inside that there was no question that that's the one that had to be on the song. So I left and I took the national, and I went home and I recorded it, and it sounded cool, but it just wasn't quite right. It wasn't what I had in mind, and I couldn't shake couldn't shake thinking about this Jerry Douglas signature. So I eventually called him up, I think the next day, and I said, hey, I'm so sorry, man, to have to ask, but is there any chance that I could borrow the Beard and come and do it? And I can pick it up in the morning and drop it off at night and stuff. And Tony was really cool, and he said, oh, there's not many people that I would lend it out to, but I know you'll look after it and do good things with it. So I went around the next day and dropped off the national and went and brought home the Beard and recorded it, and it sounds amazing, man. It's such such an amazing instrument. But I listen back to it, and it's, you know, it makes me want to get into it more. I'd love to, because I still play. I play Rezo like a Weissenborn player, I guess. You know, I'd love to. I'm going to explore, you know, more of the art of Rezo playing, and playing it the way that you should, I suppose, or, you know, at least understanding the traditional approaches to Rezo, so that I can take them, you know, get them under my wing. But I think that with Ben Harper, that's part of the reason why so many people get into slide because of him, is because, you know, he gave it a new life, and it's not from my perspective, you know, that's something that's certainly not to be underestimated, because the Weissenborn obviously had been around for a long time, and it's got a fairly rich history in particularly American music.
Mm-hmm.
But he, you know, when Ben Harper came along, he recontextualized it, and he put it in a different musical context, and made it and played it in a different way, and yeah, just gave it a new life and made it cool, you know, and that's what drew me to it, and I subsequently explored its history and looked into Hawaiian music and bluegrass, and, you know, all of its other applications, but it was the fresh context that he gave it for me, which just drew me in.
Yeah, see, because you know, I look at myself more as an instrumentalist. You know, my singing, I attempt to sing sometimes, but, you know, you're a really great singer, you know, so I'm sure that you found a kinship with him, being a singer-songwriter that you are, and then the singer-songwriter that he is, where he's, you know, he's not just kind of the guy in the background. He's up in the front, writing the songs, singing the songs. I know that before you played Weissenborn and you kind of got into that, you had your own group, right? The Thomas Oliver Band, and you guys toured all over the place, right? Is that the case?
Yeah, that wasn't actually before I played Weissenborn. I used to play Weissenborn with that band. So yeah, I had that band from about 2005 to 2012, perhaps. So we did it for a while, and yeah, it was kind of a roots, kind of sometimes bluesy, sometimes rootsy, sometimes rocky band, and I used to play Weissenborn and lap steel in that band, and it was cool. Yeah, we did a bunch of touring and got to support a whole bunch of legends like Joe Cocker and Eric Clapton, and a whole lot of George Thorogood, Fat Freddy's, a whole lot of people, and and I used to love that, and then I did, as that band kind of moved apart, that's when I started to really focus on the Weissenborn thing. So I always played, but that was when I started to kind of home in on the actual Weissenborn instrumental thing.
Gotcha. And maybe what I was thinking of, I read a little bit. Aaron Radford has a great site, the Weissenborn Information Exchange, and you were on there, and I kind of wanted to learn during our interview, so I apologize, you know, about getting some stuff wrong. But I know that you did drum and bass stuff. Now tell us about that. What is that, and what, you know, some of our listeners may not even know what that is, drum and bass.
So for anyone who doesn't know, drum and bass is basically a genre of heavy electronic dance music, and it's been around since the early 90s, and it came about in 1969. The Winstons released a track, and the flip side of that track was a tune called Amen Brother, and there was a drum break in that tune, which went on to become the most sampled drum break in history. It basically it's drum break in the sense that all the other instruments drop out and it's just the drum kit, which means that you can sample it and use it. It basically goes dum dum kat dum kat dum kat dum kat, and so that became sampled, and in hip hop, and it basically built drum and bass. So drum and bass is generally 170 BPM to 175 BPM. You know, dance music genres are defined by their tempos.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you just sing, that's the tempo, the beat around which drum and bass is built.
Yeah.
And I grew up on, my parents were into Bob Dylan and Neil Young and James Taylor and B.B. King and Buddy Guy and stuff like that, Bonnie Raitt, Joni Mitchell. So I grew up on all that, and when I was a teenager, I fell in love with punk music and particularly like skate punk, and then I kind of got back to blues, and I was heavily into blues for a while, and then in 2005, 2006, somewhere around there, I fell in love with drum and bass. You know how I was talking about those moments that you have in your life where you feel that your life is going to be different, and I fell in love with drum and bass, and I used to go to all the parties, and there was a venue in Wellington called Sandwiches, which is where all the international drum and bass DJs would come and play, and I fell in love with it because it's just so outrageously different to the music that I had known my whole life. Like, for example, song structures don't exist. We know songs as we know them, with verses and choruses and bridges and stuff, are completely unapplicable, because it would generally be like intro, first drop, breakdown, second drop, or whatever, and guitars are just nowhere to be seen, slide guitars, never, and even vocals, like vocals are only intermittent, most drum and bass is not about vocals at all, and when you go to a drum and bass party, the music just goes relentlessly for hours and hours, there's not even any breaks because the DJs are mixing the tunes, and I would stand on dance floors for 5 hours and dance to this music, which was just so, it's all electronic, and the beat, it's basically the same tempo for 5 hours. It's crazy, and it was just so vastly different to anything that I knew, that I just fell in love with it, and the culture associated with it, and I started DJing and buying records. I'd go to the record store every Thursday and spend $100 on records, and I'd DJ and playing vinyl and stuff, and eventually I got into so Trey, who's a drum and bass producer, who lives in Wellington too. He ended up being my neighbour, and we met, and we had mutual friends who were my auntie and uncle, and he said, "Oh, do you want to do a tune together? Do you want?" And I said yes, and we wrote this tune called "Lead Me On" and released that, and then it kind of snowballed. Like Concord Dawn, who's another really reputable name in drum and bass, he heard that tune and then contacted me and said, "Do you want to do a collab?" And then Rido from the Czech Republic heard the Concord Dawn tune, and he hit me up about doing a tune, and that got released on Metalheads, which is one of the biggest drum and bass labels in the world, run by Goldie. And then a whole bunch of people heard that, and I started getting messages about doing collabs. So it just ended up being this sort of thing which I was doing on the side, and which was awesome because it's I love the music, and it's, like I said, it's so different that it's such a cool avenue to be involved in. And so yeah, it's kind of like I was saying at the start about I've always had lots of facets to my musicianship, I guess. Some people know me as a Weissenborn instrumental player. Some people know me as a drum and bass vocalist. Some people know me as a singer-songwriter, and some people know me as like a blues rock band guy. And so I've always been quite confusing in that sense. Like some people freak when they find out that I do that too, or so with the album that I'm working on at the moment, what I was kind of getting at the time was it's the first time I've kind of just tried to break down the walls and make it all work together. So there's Weissenborn and there's Rezo, but it's a singer-songwriter album, but it's heavy sometimes, and it's got electronic influence. Like, I've programmed some of the beats myself, and so it's the first time it's kind of all come together. Anyway, I digress.
No, man, that's cool. I can see it. I and that's what I wanted this to be too, is to kind of show all the different facets of Thomas Oliver, because you're it's definitely an interesting guy, man. You've got so many different, like you said, facets to your music that it's awesome. I just really dig it. I do
Cool,
have
man.
one question. This has just popped into my mind, and I got to ask you, being the studio geek, uh, how did you go about miking the Rezo versus how you normally mic the Weissenborn? What was the difference? I know that's totally
Uh,
random compared to what we were
no, that's
just
cool.
talking
No,
about.
totally cool. I just used I just used a Charter Oak E700, which is a FET microphone, large diaphragm condenser, basically. Just had one mic, and I just angled it in. I just found a sweet spot, but angled it generally at the 12th fret, or sort of across the cone.
Hmm.
And yeah, I used my Buzz Audio preamp, and I tracked it through my LA2A, just to take the edge off. But that was about it, really. It was just such a beautiful sounding instrument naturally that
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to create something. Yeah, and it was in the mix of a song. There was bass and acoustic guitar and Hammond organ and vocals and stuff. So I wasn't trying. Yeah, I was basically just trying to get something that would sit on top of that. So that worked perfectly.
Yeah, the Rezo can be a tricky thing to mic with the two sound holes and then the cone,
Mm,
and trying to get it just right. That's the way I do it too. I found just a little bit up from the cone and kind of in between the two sound holes, kind of
yeah.
right where your picking hand is. Seems
Oh
to
yeah.
give a sweet spot right there.
Oh cool.
Yeah, yeah. Very cool, man. Well, man, do you have anything else you want to talk about, or anything that any advice
Um,
maybe you can give to some of? I know a lot of my students will be watching this.
Advice. Oh man, I don't know. I
Work.
always feel a bit sheepish giving advice to people. I don't know what I would have to say that anyone should listen to. But I don't know. Do you want to talk about the moment anymore? Because you're going
Sure.
to do an accompanying tab with this, yeah?
Yeah, yeah. Let's do that. That'd be great.
Um, just trying to think if there's anything else that. Have you got any questions about the moment or how you play it or?
Well, I mean, one thing that you might be able to break down is the form of it, because I know, when I was going to tackle it, I looked at all these pages of tablature and I'm like, ooh, but I know it has like some sort of a form that, you are repeating that form. So what would that be? Maybe breaking down the form of the tune.
Sure, yeah. It's actually really simple. Generally, the way I approach writing Weisenborn instrumentals is I just think of them like songs, and that the melody is like the vocal melody, and then the chord movement is the chords underneath. That's sort of the way I think about it in my head. Um, and the moment is just it's just verse, chorus, bridge, verse, or bridge outro. So the first verse is 4 times through the chord progression, then the chorus. Second verse is half that, so just 2 times through the verse progression, then the chorus. And then there's the bridge, which is when it goes to the 2 chord or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that point on, it just does another verse, like four of the verse progression again, and then a couple of repeats. So it ends up being, 4 and 5 or something, 4 and 3 halves, or. But essentially, it's just a song structure: verse, chorus, bridge, verse, outro-ish.
Nice. And that's probably how I'll you know, just kind of telling the listeners, I was planning on doing a lesson with this one. And that's what I was going to do, is to, suggest, well, here's just another verse, but here's what he does different this time, or here's what he does different. So, because that's what I
Yeah.
hear when you do it. You do some subtle things that are just a little bit different each time.
Yeah, a lot of those things they're just little like little fills in between. So they're the things that change. There are slight sort of phrasing differences, but generally, so this bit here, sometimes I'll go, or sometimes I go, or whatever it may be.
Exactly.
And then a couple of little bits that change throughout, and those fills really, are interchangeable. Sometimes I'll just make them up on the spot. I'll do the verse riff, and then when I get to the fill part, often live, I'll just make one up or just do whatever I'm feeling. That they can kind of change. I think I just, as I was playing it, I just came across one thing which is a little bit tricky. At the start, each verse riff when it goes, there's this bass note here. There's boom ba da da. It's just another thing that I've seen that on when I've watched other people playing it. It seems to be something that gets missed, but. There's a bass note here, the C sharp. Oh, what is that? A B flat. Just before that, boom, so you kind of have to try and sneak the note in.
Yeah.
Before you jump down.
Cool.
Yeah.
And as far as the tuning on that goes, do you normally? I know it's tuned. Is it a whole step flat, or I mean?
Just a semitone flat.
Semitone, okay.
So it's standard major tuning down a semitone.
Okay, and you would definitely recommend people to keep the same gauge of strings that they would normally have on their Weissenborn and just tune it down a half step?
Yeah, you could probably go up a gauge to 14s, but
okay.
It works fine for me. The way Tony Francis puts it is that, sometimes you can start hearing the string and not the instrument. If you have too heavy a gauge on, it starts to sound like the strings and not the instrument. So that would be my reason for not going up a gauge, because down a semitone is not much. The 13s are already decent gauge. They're going to handle it. So C sharp for me works well. But obviously you can play the song in D, or you can play it in E flat, or wherever you want to play it. I just found that C sharp was where it sat. C sharp, got a softness about it which I liked, and it worked well there.
Very cool, man. Very cool. Well, man, I've enjoyed this so much. I'm a total fan
me too.
of Thomas Oliver.
Awesome.
Well, good deal. Well, we'll go ahead and sign off here. And man, I just want to thank you again. And let me say your website again. Thomas Oliver, and that's THOMAS Oliver.co.nz if you guys want to check it out.
Yeah, but probably Facebook and Instagram and all the social media is probably the best places to get me, because they're the ones where I'm posting, and I'm often posting what I'm up to on Instagram or Facebook. So if you want to keep up with my new album and release dates and new songs and stuff, come and find me on social media.
And tell us that new album again. I'm super excited to see this album come out. Yeah.
Floating in the Darkness is what it's called.
Floating in the Darkness, and we're looking for it. I won't hold you to this, but around what?
Second half of the year, I'll leave it. I'll leave it that. Basically, I'll be finished it in about a month's time.
Okay.
And then potentially sometime around August, or that's a guess. But second half of 2016, it'll be out. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Thomas Oliver, guys, hope you enjoyed it. And Thomas, thanks, man. And great. Okay. Well, take care, and we'll see you. If you ever want to do this again, just let me know. It'll be fun.
Nice one. Thanks, everyone.
See ya
later.